June 10th, 2025 regular council meeting is called to order at 4:04. Council would like to acknowledge the Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video recorded and broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Are there any late items? There were quite a number of emails that came in this afternoon. Are they not considered late items?
Through Mayor to Council, yes, all the correspondence has been forwarded to Mayor to Council. Not considered later item just because later item usually is a subject, like a new subject. All these correspondence is related to the agenda item already listed on the agenda, so that's the reason it doesn't consider later item. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does council have all the many emails that came in this afternoon? Okay. May I have a motion to adopt the June 10th, 2025 regular council meeting as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Hoare.
Second.
Councillor Anderson. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. There is one set of meeting minutes for adoption. That is May 27th, 2025. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have a motion to adopt the May 27th, 2025 regular council meeting minutes as presented?
So moved.
Councillor Anderson.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty. All in favor? None opposed. That carries. We have 3 unfinished business items on the agenda today. The first item is development variance permit for 1869 Cedar Grove Place, presented by our Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg.
Through the mayor. So this is a development variance permit for 1869 Cedar Grove Place. It was there was a notice given for the variance that was requested, and an opportunity was made for public input, and the decision that essentially was deferred at the last council meeting. So really, it's back. It's the same report back on council's agenda. So I would see if there's any questions from council at this point.
Does council have any questions for staff? No? Okay. There is a recommendation. If anybody would like to move that, even if it's for discussion.
I can move it.
Councillor Anderson.
I will move the council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue development variance permit DVP 25-02.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Further discussion? Councillor Mafty, you look ready to discuss.
I just would like some clarification on the record as to how and if and how and by whom this matter could be deferred a second time, because we've received a request to do so, and it's my understanding that the only person who can request a deferral is the proponent who put the initial variance permit application in, and I'm hoping our CAO can just walk us through the technicalities of that.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Councilor Mafty, Mr. Chow may want to jump on just some procedural motions. Council can defer at any time items on your agenda. You're up to you. I think what we're saying about if the application was to be the applicant could pull or postpone the putting on the agenda as the applicant. But it's up to council on any matter if you want to table something or move it forward? Mr. Chow?
Through mayor to council, as the CAO, Mr. Harding stated, there are two ways to do this. One is the applicant himself can ask to withdraw or defer. So far, we haven't received any from the applicant. Another way is council can make a motion to defer this item, just like Mayor did the last time. But because in this case, we have councillor make and second on this motion, the easiest way, if the councillor who make the motion withdraw that motion first, so that allow another councillor to put up a motion to defer first. Then council can vote on the defer motion, then see what's the next motion come up.
Can the original motion just be defeated if we vote on it?
But if it's because the motion currently is the recommendation for authorize the DVP issue. So if it's defeated, then the defer motion will not be able to in
Okay.
the right order.
Okay, I get it. Has the applicant reached out to us to ask for a deferment?
Mayor, no, he's not asked for deferment at this time.
And do we know if the applicant is on Zoom?
Through the mayor, yes, the applicant is connected via Zoom.
Would it be appropriate to ask them to speak?
Yeah, we can ask the applicant whether he wish to withdraw or defer his application.
Okay.
Mr. Lancaster, if you would like to speak, you can do so now. I have unmuted your mic.
Thank you. Thanks for your time today. Guess I'm not understanding why we're looking at tabling it again.
It's our understanding, based on correspondence we've received, that negotiations are ongoing between the two parties.
Yes, we have had some negotiation, but at this time, we're so far apart. And as much as I'd like to and will continue negotiating, we found that it's not, we think it's a side issue. We think that if there's, we would love to have some recompensatory issues to solve the issue, but at this stage of the game, we're miles apart in terms of where we see the light of day. And we're thinking that it's not part of council's decision to be involved in neighbor negotiations monetarily, that the issue surrounding the variance, as was stated, was supported by the city. We've done everything in accordance with what was prescribed. We can continue negotiations in good faith, and we probably plan on doing that. But at this stage of the game, we're prepared to put this back on council because we have faith that council will make a vote based on the pure statistics and the merits of the variance application.
Okay, what is council's wish? Who moved that motion? Was that Councillor Anderson? Are you prepared to carry forward with a vote, or would you like to withdraw it?
Would you like to carry forward with the vote?
Don't put it on me.
You just asked for someone to make the motion.
I did.
This is a setup. Yeah, it's.
I would say if there was one more deferral, it would be the last one. This can't continue on. But it may give the parties a chance to come to an agreement of some sort.
Right.
I mean, if to interrupt, if I may say, I think everybody in the room knows that we are acting in good faith, and we have tried over the last 4 or 5 years. The door's been wide open. We've had lots of opportunity to negotiate, and it's difficult that at the 11th hour, when the numbers are just so completely ridiculous. But I think council members should know and understand that we have been there and we have been open and we are open to maintaining neighborly relations. But again, it's that's not the purview, our feeling of council, to be in the middle of negotiating between the neighbors. It just feels inappropriate in some way.
Believe me, we don't want to be in the middle of the negotiation. Mr. Harding, any thoughts on process here?
Yeah, so, Worship, as staff has indicated, you have an application for a full DVP. All the information for the DVP for your consideration is there. Council can defer for a variety of reasons, of feeling you don't have enough information or you need more time to think. But at the end of the day, regardless of the civil issues between the two parties, council's role is to consider this development variance permit and is it valid or not.
Comments?
I feel that we have all of the information in front of us. I feel like the deferral at the last meeting gave everyone a chance to feel confident of that. I myself have had conversations with both parties. I feel like I have a pretty full understanding of the situation. It's a complicated one, but if the proponent doesn't want to defer, I see that if council were to defer this, it would be difficult to defend against an accusation of bias because there's no technical procedural reason to justify a deferral at this point. There's no more information that we're waiting on. There's no more context that we need to apprise. So that's my take on it.
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I don't think that there's anything else procedurally, like as you said. So I think we could go ahead with the debate on it, unless Councillor Hoare, do you have any opinion on whether we should defer or not?
No, I agree. The thing is that procedurally we're the motion is about the DVP. It's not about the negotiations. And yeah, without a reason, as it were, to defer, as Councillor Mafty said, it does look as though there's a bias if we do. So.
Well, it is sounding like the negotiation may take longer than another 2 weeks anyway. I do have a question for staff, though, if that's okay. Page 17 of our agenda, it's Appendix B. And it is a letter from Andy Lancaster. There seems to be a contradiction. Under the details, on the second bullet point, it says footings for the project were installed and locally approved by the district on May 18th, 2018. And then in the next paragraph, it says, it is unfortunate that a post-footing survey was not required at the time by the District of Ucluelet to be completed, as we would have caught this situation far sooner. Do those two statements not contradict each other? Mr. Gregg?
Through the mayor to council. Some jurisdictions sort of require a series of surveys during a house build. Basically a survey just prior to pouring the foundations, and then one confirming afterwards, or maybe one at the end of framing, and then also at the completion. Tofino and Ucluelet do basically have a process of, because essentially it's confirming, did they build to the plans? that the process that we have used is to have a survey where they pin the corners just prior to pouring. So essentially the formwork for the foundation is in place. And they have the surveyor's stakes that lines it all up, so it's make sure it's in the right place. And typically that is just before they pour concrete into the forms. So that was done. There was a check. They're good to pour. I believe in this case the pour didn't happen right away, and there was some change of, well, we can get more parking or something, and so it shifted. In the shifting of it, it moved across the property line, and hence we have the problem. So no, we didn't do a follow-up survey. That is not a typical part of the process. It keeps the costs down by doing the survey once, not 2 or 3 or 4 times. So that, I think the discussion around like the something like a post-construction survey that would have caught it could have, but that is not part of the process for built in Euclid, currently.
So going forward, could this not be a requirement to avoid? I'm just worried that this is going to set a precedent where someone can just build a house any place they feel like it and ask for forgiveness later.
Through the mayor, it could be a requirement. It would add time and cost for each build. This is a rare situation, and in any case, essentially there are building plans, and they're in the package. So there's a survey there showing what was the approved plan and then where it landed, if you will. The owner and their builder are responsible to build according to what are the approved plans, and yes, it was caught later in the game. So that could be avoided by adding additional survey work during the build, but as I said, that would add some work and cost.
So what would the process be to insist on a post-footing survey, Mr. Harding?
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Gregg is absolutely right. It's just another additional cost to construction. We would just amend, ask Mr. Gregg for sure, but we just amend the building permit process that it would add a post survey to it, to the build, which, as he mentioned, would slow things down. Surveyors would come back out and they'd confirm the survey. It'd be an extra cost to the builder. But as Mr. Craig also mentioned, does happen in other jurisdictions.
That would give me some level of confidence that this would not happen again. Just saying. Any other comments from council? I guess the question still remains, the mover of the motion, if you would like to continue with a vote on the motion, or if you'd like to pull the motion and change it to a...
I think it sounds like we're going to keep the motion.
Okay.
It sounds like
Mr.
council's
Harding?
on board with that.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Oh,
My apologies.
okay. All right, so moving forward with the motion, if there's no other discussion?
I might just add a small point there.
Sure.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I agree that this is a difficult case. It's complicated, but at the same time, I think we have to work within our purview and what our job is, and not necessarily go into the realm of punitive damages or things like that. In this particular case, the way as I understand it. The building, the engineering that's gone on afterwards has placated the building code, the BC building code, and the fire separation. So just looking at it academically, and this was before I heard the other side, but looking at it coming into this, it was quite black and white. And as far as voting on a DVP and moving forward, it made sense to me. It seemed like they'd done everything that they could. It was a crappy situation. And they did everything in their power to do the remediation that they could. Within the safety codes, they added the fire separation, and they pulled back the roof line as much as they could, and they placated basically the inspector to the point that it was a sign-off from the municipality. So I'm not sure outside of that, and I know this is difficult, and it because people are upset, but outside of that, that's our purview, that's our lane. And I think awarding people damages or things like that is not our job. And I think maybe there's a great case there. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. but my job is to understand the bylaw and the DVP, and if things have gone in the direction within the confines of the bylaw and what the DVP asked for. So in that case, that's how I look at it, and I just have to be careful as a counselor, to make sure I stay in my lane.
That was how I saw it 2 weeks ago when it was in our council package 2 weeks ago. I always make notes on the side, and I was ready to approve it until I got the second side of the story an hour before the council meeting, and so I deferred it to give us time to give it some proper thought. And I know some of you have spoken with both parties, and so I think we're going to move forward with a vote. The motion has been made and seconded. So call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thank you. That's a difficult one. I think we're good. The second item is 1061 Helen Road Traffic Impact Study, presented by our Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Council. Thank you. This is a follow-up to concerns raised by Council concerning the carrying capacity of Helen Road in relation to the consideration of redevelopment on Helen Road, 1061 Helen Road. To respond to those questions and concerns, district staff commissioned a professional traffic analysis from Bunton Associates. Bunton Associates are really the province's leading experts in traffic analysis and traffic flow, traffic networks, etc. They compared the current zoning, which allows one single family, one secondary suite, one accessory dwelling, and 3 tourism accommodations, to the proposed zoning, which allows 6 multiple family dwelling units. So this study used the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, also the widest set of data used in North America for this purpose, to calculate anticipated traffic volume for the current and proposed at peak AM and PM times. The results are in the report, Council, and I'll just share a few of the highlights here. So the total peak trips for the current zoning equals 3, and the total peak hour trips for the proposed zoning equals 3 as well. So what this looks like is that at peak hour, there's 60 minutes there with 3 trips. So every 20 minutes, there'd be a car visible on site. So that's both for the current zoning and for the proposed. The study goes on to share, so there's really a nominal or no change from the current to the proposed zoning. Again, it says that the low level of traffic has no impact on Helen Road whatsoever. And then lastly, that there could be up to 75 to 100 vehicles added to the network on Helen Road until there are concerns to be addressed. So that study, Council, is appended to a report for your purposes and the public record. We trust that this answers the question of, can Helen Road have carrying capacity to consider the proposed development? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. McIntosh?
Through the mayor, quick question. Just out of my own curiosity here, how much did that report cost?
Through the mayor to Councillor Mafty, it probably costs about $2,500.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Councillor Anderson?
Through the mayor. So, did an engineer come in person to look at that road at all, or was
Through the mayor to Councillor Anderson.
did Bunt come in person to Helen Road?
No, they didn't. They did a desktop exercise, Google review, etc.
So, with all due respect, I think when we went through this last time, I went back and looked at the minutes, and the bulk of the opposition, I think we had 13, 14 letters of opposition. Almost each one specified that it was the pedestrian safety. So not whether the traffic or the road could handle the traffic necessarily. That was definitely part of it. But I think the general concern that we were asking for was the idea that that road is, I think, the narrowest two-way road in the municipality. It's not necessarily how narrow the road is, but on one side there's a straight drop. There's about 2 or 3 feet, and then it goes down. There's a residence, but about a straight drop. And then on the other side, there's about 4 feet, and then there's a cliff. With two vehicles have to pass each other in that about 100 to 200 foot stretch. Both vehicles probably have to exit or go onto the shoulder. One side is a particularly soft shoulder. If there's pedestrians at that time, there's almost nowhere for them to go. It's actually a pretty scary situation. Like, I know I live on that island, so some people are saying I'm a NIMBY in this case, and you know, maybe I shouldn't be speaking, but the fact that there's 11 people that, you know, half of those aren't even living on the island that agree that, you know, they have friends that play on that island, the kids walk down there. There's no safe passage, and there's no alternate. There's no other way on or off that island. There's a one road that's 16 feet wide, and there's nowhere for a pedestrian to go. So, I'm not giving a hard time, because I think, you know, there might have been a miscommunication here, but I think what we were asking for is maybe not just a trip generation memo that was done, you know, on a desktop, but an actual like public safety study to show that what the implications were of having increased traffic. And I'm not. It's not that I'm. You know, I know there'd be more and more people on the island, but I'm saying even now, today, that's an issue. It's a definite public safety issue. So before we go ahead and increase density, make plans to the OCP to upzone what could be there, I think it's important for us to take account and say, hey, if we're going to do a traffic study, let's do a real traffic study and take into account pedestrian safety as opposed to just what a road can handle. So I would the next agenda item after this is for the property and the rezoning of the property, and I would move to table that until such time as we have an actual public safety or a traffic study that takes into consideration pedestrian safety. So, like, at this point, there's actually no existing pedestrian separation whatsoever, and the traffic memo here doesn't. It just speaks about traffic volumes and doesn't directly or indirectly address how the increase would affect pedestrian safety in any way. Wouldn't the increase in the traffic ostensibly increase the pedestrian risk? And I think if we want to make any decision about adding any density to a situation, we have to take that into consideration. Those are just my thoughts.
Is there a question in there, Councillor Anderson?
The question was originally is if anyone came in person to look at it, but then I kind of went on and on. So
Okay. So just referring back to Appendix D of the next report, the reason third reading was deferred was until council receives a staff investigation into the feasibility of widening Helen Road. That was the reason it was deferred.
right, and I think it was widening because of pedestrian safety was the
Well, for a number of reasons.
right.
So if you recall, that feasibility study was done by the Acoustics Group, that the owners and developers of High Focus that came before us. And speaking to them as recently as yesterday, they are still on board with doing that work of widening Helen Road. So I think it could be a moot point at in the not too distant future that it is possible to widen Helen Road
Yeah, no,
with a sidewalk.
That sounds great, but until, you know, because we haven't done any rezoning, we haven't even heard that new proposal, that I wouldn't be prepared to put that risk up for public safety. Like right now, there's literally nowhere for anyone to go on that road.
Just as a point of order here, I feel like we have an agenda with numbered items, and we're on 5.2, which is just receiving this study.
Correct.
I'm not trying to dissuade or discourage what seems to be a really relevant discussion, but it's not clear to me why we're having this discussion in regards to 5.2. Like, we've received the study whether we like it or not. I don't see that this is the correct time to debate the implications of that study as it refers to another agenda item later on in the agenda.
Right. Or even referring to an entirely different development, right? So now we've gone off sort of two levels here. So that's in regard to the traffic memo. The reason I would bring that up is because I would ask for a more fulsome public safety version of the traffic study. So that's the relevance to what.
Okay.
But I agree with what you're saying. We are spinning a bit here off to the next agenda item, but. Yeah, that was my motion, is to go ahead and do a more fulsome study. And I don't know if I would rely on something in the future that we don't totally know about right now, if that makes sense.
I just wanted to bring everyone's attention to what the motion actually said,
Right.
why third reading was deferred.
And I've got a comment on that. It's like we were asking about the widening and the feasibility of that, and yet we got a trip generation study, which is not the same thing.
Mr. McIntosh?
Through the mayor, thank you. So the scope of work to Bunton Associates was to do an analysis on the need for widening of Helen Road, comparing the current zoning to the proposed future zoning. And so what they've outlined here is that there is no need for widening of Helen Road currently to hold the current load if 1061 Helen Road was built out, compared to the future zoning, if that future zoning was considered approved and built out. What the study is saying is that no widening is needed of Helen Road, and that the impacts are the same today as they would be if you were to consider and approve this particular application. So that said, I think this is part A. And then, of course, there's part B, which is more traffic density at a later stage.
I hear and agree that, like, I understand the difference between saying can the road be widened versus vehicle count, but the report is pretty clear. The third bullet point says this low level of traffic would have no negative impact on the area road network and does not trigger the need for road widening to Helen Road. So at least it was something that they considered. And then point 4 is specifically headed Helen Road widening. And it goes on to say that based on the findings above, based on anticipated peak hour volumes, et cetera, it does not trigger road widening to accommodate traffic volumes as a general, like, I'm not convinced that this report doesn't answer both the spirit of our question about the widening as well as the sort of technical consequences of that. Like, I understand that it's not exactly what we asked for, but I feel like it delivers what we asked for in every reasonable way.
It does speak to the possibility.
Yeah, like if all it was a vehicle count that said, oh, this road can handle X number of vehicles, I'd say, okay, but that's not necessarily what we asked for. But they address the widening in, several sections of the report. So it's not like they overlooked that that's what we wanted to know.
Great, thank you.
Through the mayor, I respectfully have to disagree with that last part, because I think that the spirit of what we were asking when we dove into this was that the road may have been too narrow for, this is just within the context of how many cars are coming and going. It doesn't take into pedestrian safety whatsoever. There's actually zero. No one came to look at it. No one saw how close the cliff is or the drop off on the other side. If somebody gets injured out there, that's our responsibility to let this happen. This is literally someone did this on Google Maps at their desk in 10 minutes and was able, being facetious when I say 10 minutes, but somebody just looked and they looked at a count and they looked at the narrowness of the road. There's absolutely zero public safety taking into account here. So I think it behooves us moving forward, if we want to add density to anywhere that has one road in, one road out, to look at the impact on the people using that road, especially the kids that are walking there. They just have nowhere to go. There's no sidewalk. There's literally nowhere for anyone to go. So I you know, because I think this is leading into the next agenda item. I agree, and I'm bleeding the lines here, but yeah, no,
I think the report does address the question that we had, whether it was done in person or on desktop.
Do you think it would be a good idea to have a study that takes into account
Pedestrians.
the pedestrian separation on that road?
Mr. McIntosh, were pedestrians considered during the report process here?
No, the scope of work was, again, to look at the viability of the single lane to carry the capacity if needed additional upgrades. So no, Bunton Associates didn't do a concept drawing of having a multi-use path there or a sidewalk or consideration. The scope of work was to consider the safety, the effectiveness of that road today, and is there added risk or safety or concern issues if the rezoning was approved. And so the results are that same for everybody, for really traffic, for everyone using that space now. There'd be no change. That was the scope of work.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Hoare? Anything? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you.
The third item is rezoning and OCP amendment for 1061 Helen Road, presented by our Director of Community Planning, Mr. Gregg.
Seems we're standing up for this one. Thank you, through the mayor. So this is the companion piece, if you will. So really just the background on this is that this item, it's kind of like we're back in September, that 2 public hearings have been held on the bylaws, and that consideration of third reading was deferred while council sought an answer to the question on Helen Road, which has obviously just been addressed. So at this point in time, council could then consider third reading now of the bylaws and whether to move forward. If council has other questions for staff, we're here. And I just, having heard the questions in the last discussion, I just, in terms of point in time, I think that the question of the wording of the council motion versus the type of study a bit had to do with also, yes, the timing of the physical engineering of could a pathway fit within the Helen Road width. We had that in, and Bunt had that at the time the study was done. So really it was more of a question of the trigger, I think, of does this application or the change in the zoning that's being requested with the change of use, would it trigger those sorts of things? So I hope that helps a little bit of the last discussion, but I'd see if there are any other questions around the OCP amendment and zoning in front of you.
For me, just going back in time a little bit, originally the owner of this property was planning on 11 townhouse units. Is that correct?
Yes, the original application was a larger one. It was amended after some discussions with with staff and when they understood what the current zoning was and some of the context.
Right. So it's now been downsized to 6 individual units.
That is correct.
And the what the current zoning allows is a single-family dwelling, a secondary suite, an accessory residential dwelling unit, and 3 bed and breakfast units for a total of 6 altogether.
Through the mayor to council, yes, it's a total of 6 units.
3 of which are short-term rentals.
That's correct.
And so what they're proposing is a half a duplex for 1 dwelling unit, another half a duplex for another dwelling unit, and then 4 single MFR units, which are not nightly rentals. They are full-time residential use. So again, for a total of 6 units, but no short-term rentals.
Through the mayor to council, yes, it is. The change is essentially 6 units, 3 of which would be vacation rental, 3 of which would be residential, to 6 units, all residential, and the zoning amendment also keeps the total floor area the same of what the existing zoning currently allows as sort of the ceiling, the maximum.
And just one other thing in the report that I found interesting, the lot coverage for the proposed development will be 6,976 square feet, which represents approximately 16.29% of an allowable 40%.
That is correct. So there's no request for increasing the lot coverage.
Right, so that seems pretty low, really, if they're allowed 40% coverage and they're only doing 16. Just confirming.
Yes.
Any questions from council?
Okay, I'm not necessarily opposed. I mean,
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt and I have to raise another point of order. With all due respect to my esteemed colleague, I feel that it would be difficult for me to understand how you could justify not recusing yourself on this issue when you've petitioned council to vote in a certain way for specific reasons that are personal to you. I no disrespect, but I feel that this is a pretty cut and dried case where it would be inappropriate for anyone to vote on this issue after the communication that council's received from you, from your spouse, and from, you know, like within the context of how this would personally affect you.
fair. It's a fair question. I definitely accept that.
It's not a
but
question, it's a statement.
It's as a statement, sure. And you know, my wife is a separate person. She's a separate entity. She's allowed to have her opinion, and I'm not.
You yourself wrote an email to council from your council address.
I wanted to show a picture. I didn't tell you how to vote in either way. I just showed a picture of the width of the road, and I wanted to bring up the point that I'm not even going to debate like having density on the island or anything like that. The only thing I'm talking about is asking for a study, and a slightly better study that I thought that we had asked for, and that's the reason we tabled it, was to have pedestrian safety. And honestly, Councillor Mafti, I'm not going to get into the weeds about short-term rentals or anything. I'm not even talking about that. All I'm saying is that if children are walking on that road, they have nowhere to go.
Okay,
and
but that was the last agenda item, and we had a discussion about that on the last agenda item, and this agenda item is a request for an OCP amendment and a rezoning.
Correct.
Yeah. I'm not like the bailiff or anything. I just wanted to state clearly on the record that for this particular agenda item, I think it would be difficult to justify not recusing yourself.
Fair enough. Okay. Like, I don't know if
you don't need
Mr.
to
Harding,
respond to
you
me.
think
I just wanted to
Well,
put that on the record.
I'll defer over here, but I will say that there was probably 14 or 15 letters, and of those there was probably 4 or 5 that were not on the island. And I think as a councillor in a small municipality, at some point you're representing people. That's our job. Is so if people come to me, and of those 14 letters, a lot of them were 2 or 3 people per letter. So what number does it take for a councillor to have to be responsible for his constituents? So that is my neck of the woods for sure. And my wife wrote a letter because she's not on board with it. And I'm worried about children walking across that road. But I don't think that puts me in a point of conflict. I think we live in a small place, and I'm representing a pretty large number of people. And that's my job as I see it. But I defer to the CAO if
Well, just to mention that the last item, the study did say that the road did not need widening. That was the result of that study.
with absolutely no context to pedestrian safety. With all due respect, I'm not.
So are you recusing yourself or no?
I don't plan on recusing myself unless our CAO thinks that this is appropriate at this time.
Mayor, I think I called you worship, sorry. Did I do it already a few times? Do your worship, or did I do mayor? Anyway, mayor. So this is really a political discussion between the four of you. It's really a councillor's decision on conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. And really is between the four of you. We can advise council members outside of open meetings about if and when they believe that they are in conflict or not. This is not necessarily the place and time for that. But it's between the four of you. You can debate those kinds of things as much as you like. At the end of the day, it's going to be a councillor's decision on what they do, and they'll have to answer to those kind of questions from the public or others as they move forward. Mr. Chow, anything you want to add to that?
Through mayor to council. Conflict of interest, actually, the provincial rules is absolutely up to councillor him or herself to declare conflict of interest. No one else actually can force any individual councillor to declare conflict of interest. What is going to happen is if a public member or someone else perceive such individual councillor actually voted in the conflict of interest, this person can bring an application to the court, and a judge will make a ruling on whether this councillor actually violate conflict of interest. If the judge ruled that this councillor actually did voted, have conflict of interest violation, judge actually can order this councillor to be disqualified. So you will lose the councillor seat.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chow. Up to you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna recuse myself. No.
Okay, and just to be clear to council, a property owner does have the right to develop on their property. Right, currently it's vacant land, and they have come forward with first a very dense application, which has now been scaled back. They've removed the short-term rentals. It's going to provide housing for 6 units of housing, and so what we're looking at is an OCP amendment and a zoning amendment. So any other questions for staff? No? Okay, so there are some recommendations, and I believe they have to be moved separately.
I'll move that council give third reading to District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Mafty. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1337, 2024.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. You're on a roll.
I'll move that council give third reading to the District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322, 2024.
Thank you,
Second.
Councillor Mafty. Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion?
I would just ask that I'm not necessarily opposed to this development. I'm not saying that. All I'm asking for is that we could do a better traffic study that involves pedestrian safety for the people who live on that island. That's all I'm asking for. So even if this is obviously going to go ahead, that's fine. But I do ask that we could do that traffic study.
Your request has been noted. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move that council adopt District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1322, 2024.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll move that council authorize the Director of Community Planning to execute and issue development permit DP 22-13.
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Spirited.
Mayor?
Mr. Harding?
Excuse me, I know Councilor Anderson has mentioned about more work to be done. If council does want staff to do something, would require a motion from council if you want any other work or assessment done on that area.
Would you like to make that motion, Councillor Anderson?
Oh, sure. So it's off the fly here.
Through Mayor to Council, we're going to do a screen share so we can type the wording, so
Perfect.
Council can look at the exact same wording.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Okay, you've got your first word. Request? Conduct a public safety study. Discussing a potential
Yeah.
pedestrian safety issue? Any changes you want to that, Councillor Anderson?
No, I think this is.
Mayor, as Councilor Anderson's thinking about that, one of the, of course, I'm new here, so I'm just thinking is some of the issues that council may want to have staff come back to is where is this road on our road network, and where is it within the OCP on active transportation or pedestrian safety? And if you want us to come back and show where that is, you may all know that, but if that's it seems like there's an issue of where is this road in regards to safety for children walking to school, those types of things. I'm not sure if was mentioning that that's because I'm hearing a little bit more that it's concern of the standard of the road, what's happening there. We can just do an actual safety study, but is that really what council's looking for? Is council looking where is this road on our standard of roads, and where is it on a priority of upgrading to a certain standard?
Could we do both? Does one negate the other in this case? Sorry, he was asking you that question. I think. Am I allowed to jump in?
I kind of feel like involving the OCP is going to complicate it a little bit, but
I just mentioned that, Mayor, just because you do have an OCP and you have sort of a transportation plan of some sort that we can advise you where this is on the priority, if that's some council objective, or is it strictly you just want us to do a safety study of that section of road based on this development, or safety of that road, period?
well, probably safety of the road, period. So
Yeah.
do we need to specify an active transportation methodology or an OCP?
Your Worship,
Review?
or Mayor, I'm just worried we come back with just a safety plan and it still doesn't address what council's really, or particularly Councilor Anderson's looking for. Is this road the standard of what the residents want and what the community wants?
So how would you amend this motion then?
Yeah.
I can't read it from here.
Well, while he's doing that, if I can just jump in, I distinctly remember this issue coming up, and there was much debate at the time, and it came up the first time with the Kistix development, and I remember Councillor Kennington sitting here, like, my understanding is that road is up to standard. We can debate whether or not the road could be enhanced, whether it could be improved, whether it could be better than it is, but I don't think there's any debate that that road currently meets the requirements for the usage that it sees. In fact, it very likely seems to meet the requirements for much higher usage. I think that this is a critical issue for a large development to address. So, for example, the proposal that we saw from Ekistics to dramatically increase not just the density, but more importantly, the total volume of traffic on that road, that seems like something that a developer should do at their expense and include with an application, perhaps even prior to an application, bring that information to a public hearing, because this is obviously a contentious issue and something that many in the community are keenly aware of. So I'm not trying to dismiss that, but I don't think that this is something that council should be spending taxpayer dollars on preemptively for the sake of what? Like, if there's any reason to believe that that road as it is today is unsafe, then we need to look into that. But it's not clear to me that that's the case. And so I would really suggest we hesitate and ask ourselves what we're actually spending taxpayer money on, what we're dedicating staff resources to. I think we've got bigger fish to fry than to preemptively do a road safety assessment on a road that's safe. If someone wants to add 300 houses and they want to widen the road, that's something that they're going to do at their expense, and they should commission the report at their expense. This isn't a UCLULET problem as it is today right now, I don't think.
I think the key there is that you said, I think it's safe. And I don't think we get to say that. And I feel, and a lot of people feel, and there's a lot of letters in the community, the people that we represent are clearly voicing that opinion that it is unsafe. So what we're asking for is the study that I thought the direction we were going, to look at public safety within that realm. And I don't think it's up to a developer to be responsible for the municipality's public safety. If they have a big development and that increases risk, sure, I think that triggers that. But I think that there was a trigger long before anything came here. And what I'm saying is, before any density increases on that island, even if nothing was being built, I still think we should be looking at doing a traffic safety study there. But definitely now for increasing it. And if you have those 6 units that you're putting on that lot, how many children are moving into those homes? It's not an if, it's a when. And there's going to be a problem there. And I don't think we'd sit around and wait for a developer to come and fix our problems for us. And I don't want to spend taxpayers' money. I agree with you on that. But again, public safety is where I draw the line on that kind of thing.
Just to be clear, the point that I was trying to make is that it's my understanding, i.e. I think that road is safe based on information that we received from Mr. McIntosh, based on information that we received from district staff. It's not my Mark Mafty bird lover assessment. Like I didn't, my impression based on what we heard from staff when this issue was raised was that the road is fine. So maybe this would be, not to put you on the spot, Mr. McIntosh, but can you just refresh my memory? Like, do you recall anything like that? Like, am I misremembering? Because I don't want to put you on the spot and make you look bad if I remember you saying something that you didn't.
Through the mayor to council. So what the road currently doesn't have is a pedestrian throughway. So it's a single lane access road that's available to carry vehicles with a little bit of shoulder width. And so as we can see on site, the edges of the road are very constrained and potentially, offer some challenges and some risks, certainly. And so I'll just share that, is that it's a single lane road that doesn't currently have pedestrian facilities in it. And so I'll offer too, what we may look to the past to ask how many incidents or concerns have happened on the road previously. That's part of traffic and pedestrian safety impact studies as well. I don't have that data in front of me today, unfortunately, but it's something that we could bring back to council for more of a fulsome consideration of what the totality of safety issues could be on that road. And that's something that we could probably do in-house for no cost.
And do you have that data, or that would have to be something that would be gathered?
I don't have it on me today. It's something that we could source and find through ICBC, through the RCMP, etc.
Would that satisfy Councillor Anderson's request?
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like this needs a proper study done, like not a memo. And I think, you know, my worry is that we're connecting dots here where we say, it's not me that's saying that it's safe, it's the traffic memo that says it's safe. But I think, Mr. McIntosh, you agreed there's absolutely zero connection here to public safety in this memo whatsoever. Am I correct in saying that? This is vehicle traffic volume.
Through the mayor's exactly what's in the study and assessment of the ability of the road to carry traffic.
Right. Fair enough. So that I would leave it at that. It's just there's absolutely nothing that this does to address public safety on that road. I think it's a real issue. I think it's been an issue for a long time. And before I put more families on that island, I think it's up to us to make sure that we have that protection in place moving forward before we put more people in an area, that we have a place where people can walk. And that's the reason for my motion.
So is the wording sufficient for your motion?
I would take out potential and issue and just say addressing pedestrian safety.
You could if you want.
Yeah, is that okay with you?
I think it actually makes it clear because it's like it's not like potential safety. We're investigating the safety, whether it's safe or unsafe.
Great.
So I'd agree with that amendment.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your motion. Do you want to read it out loud?
Sure. I'll move the council direct staff to conduct a public safety study on Helen Road addressing the pedestrian safety issue.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion?
Just to be clear, this is something that staff's going to do at no cost. We're not soliciting a consultant.
Through the mayor. So if you would like to be directive about what source of data we retrieve or level of effort, making that clear in the motion would be helpful for staff.
I mean, the way that I read that is council directs staff to conduct a public safety study rather than council directs staff to hire an outside consultant. So if everyone's on the same page, then I think it's pretty clear the way it is. I just wanted to.
I don't know if I'm looking at it that way. I don't think it, like, I think if we just go through old RCMP files to see if there was any accidents on that road, I don't know that addresses a public safety issue where there's a place with no sidewalk or no one to go. So
We've got lots of roads in this town. Imperial Lane has no sidewalk. There's sections of Peninsula Road don't have a sidewalk.
Imperial Lane's a one-way road, though. Keep that in mind.
It is, but I think if that motion's not clear, then I feel that I need to understand what I'm voting on, and I'm glad I asked that question because it sounds like we are interpreting it differently. And I would support this, but I would not support spending taxpayer dollars on a study at this point for Helen Road specifically.
I don't like. I have a hard time. Like, yeah. How do you put it? Yeah, putting a dollar value on public safety. I mean, and I don't want to put Mr. McIntosh on the spot and try and estimate what the cost might be for an engineered study, like a proper study for public safety on the road.
Through the mayor, it's safe to say that every time we pick up the phone, it's about $2,500.
No, fair enough. But a public safety study would probably be more than what we just received with the traffic memo.
Through the mayor, it's very, very similar scope of work, I'm sure. It's whether it's a couple of hours or a couple of days of effort from a consultant, that's sort of that boilerplate technical memo fee that we tend to see across the board.
How would you feel about getting just a cost estimate on this?
I think we should leave the motion as it is and refer it to staff before we take it any further. And if you're not satisfied with what staff comes up with, we can have a further discussion.
In the interest of time, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If I can just, through the mayor, ask just one quick question before we vote on this, and I'll direct my question to Mr. McIntosh. Do you have any reason to believe at this moment in time that Helen Road is unsafe or would fail to meet the minimum safety requirements according to a provincial standard?
Through the mayor, that's a difficult question for me to answer without looking at this from a historical quantitative perspective. I'd be answering personally. And so I'd be a little bit comfortable answering that directly.
Okay, fair enough.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, all in favor? None opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move into a committee of the whole meeting. I will move that council recess the June 10th, 2025 regular council meeting and convene a committee of the whole meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anderson. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. There's one information report scheduled for this committee of the whole meeting, development cost charges, DCC, and update and bylaw update, which will be presented by our Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Council, I'm happy today to provide to you an update on the Development Cost Charges Program. You approved this program to be updated in early 2024. This update includes important milestones such as capital project updates, growth development updates, rate and model creation for the program, community engagement, ministry approval, and lastly, DCC and ACC bylaw update. So this years-long project now, once done, will reset the almost 20-year-old bylaw for the community. Staff have been working on the program this year with industry DCC experts, Urban Systems. Their team has completed more than 50 of these assessments for BC communities. As well, they have created our draft DCC program and background report, which council that is appended to your agenda. Today, you will receive a presentation of the program and background. And the purpose of this is the committee and also ask questions to get feedback that shape the next steps. So we're currently at the rate model step and then entering into the development community engagement step. I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Laura Brenier. So Laura has a wealth of DCC experience and is the project manager from Urban Systems for our project. So welcome, Ms. Brenier.
Could I just ask that we open some doors and windows, please? It's getting really hot in here. Sorry to interrupt, and welcome. No, not that door.
Thank you very much for having me.
The outside door, Mr. Chow. Not the kitchen door.
I believe we're just waiting on permission for me to be able to share my screen here, and then we should be good to get going.
I'm gonna run out for 1 minute. Let's just...
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess while we get the connection on Zoom done.
Sorry, I didn't mean to lead the charge out of here just as you were starting. I was like, I'll be right back. And
So it's okay. I gave everyone time to reset technology. Thank you very much for having me. My name's Laura Bernier. I work with Urban Systems out of our Victoria office, and I've been working with James for, as James mentioned, a couple of years to develop the DCC program. We also have a proposed ACC program for consideration tonight as well. So we wanted to kick things off. Typically, we do a couple of sessions with councils around the rates. However, with the timing of the program, we would have been able to do 2 meetings, but things were ready and we wanted to bring forward the program and rates at the same time. So for tonight, hence Committee of the Whole, we wanted to give a broader overview of DCCs, what they are, how they're implemented for Mayor and Council, and as well present the draft programs and rates. So it'll be a bit of a lengthier presentation than normal. However, we really want to welcome questions throughout. These are this is a very high-level summary of, a depth of information that goes into these DCC programs, and we want to make sure that that's well understood as we present the rates as well. So welcome any questions. Please feel free to just signal, and we can stop and discuss. So primarily, just to overview the project purpose here, the DCCs and ACCs are really meant to ensure that there's sustainable cost and revenue sources required for funding infrastructure that's needed to support future growth and development. So that's kind of our overall purpose. And then really today, we're hoping to propose those rates and programs and receive some direction on whether Mayor and Council feel comfortable with proceeding to stakeholder engagement to engage with the development community concerning the rates that are provided. There's also a specific tool called the Municipal Assist Factor that supports adjusting the rates. And we have proposed a framework for the Municipal Assist Factor given the current program and looking for direction on from Mayor and Council to carry forward with that for stakeholder development or potentially to adjust those Municipal Assist Factors. So we'll do a brief overview of DCCs and ACCs and then dig into some of the technical inputs of the programs, after which you'll get a chance to see some of the rates as well as some community comparisons based on what others in the geography or similar population density are doing, as well as some considerations on implementation, and then there'll be hopefully some time for discussion and next steps. So just as a broad overview, DCCs and ACCs are both tools to cover the costs of off-site infrastructure and amenities in the case of ACCs that's needed to support growth. And the key operative piece there is growth. So all of the projects on those programs have to be driven by or benefiting future populations. It's based on the principle of cost sharing. So really here in our technical analysis, we'll dig into how the principle of cost sharing is broken down so that developers and existing taxpayers are both contributing to the cost of that infrastructure or those amenities. And then a few things to highlight here. It's a provincially regulated tool, so there's limited flexibility within it. It's governed by Part 14 and Division 19 of the Local Government Act. There is also some new legislation, Bill 46, that's come out and expanded the purview for which municipalities can charge DCCs and ACCs, which are new. And there's recently been a couple of best practice guides that have been released to help people get familiar with those programs. So the idea behind DCCs and ACCs is really to support fairness and equity. Growth should pay for growth is at the bottom of the principles for DCC and ACC programs. But really here it offers a more transparent way to have developers contribute to the infrastructure with which they will add, there will be capacity increases that are required for infrastructure to service that growth. So it really does help create a consistent approach for development in the community, as well as more certainty and hopefully faster approval times rather than like a negotiated development approach, which is not what UCLUIT has been doing, but that would have been a previous past approach. Importantly, it also really minimizes the financial risk to the district by making sure that there's sustainable funding sources in place to build infrastructure that's required when developments come online. In terms of why now, James also kind of covered some of these pieces, which was great. So there was a bylaw in 2007, and there was an updated rate developed in 2016. But really, since that time, the community has grown a lot. Infrastructure costs have drastically increased. There's new legislation and best practices, and there's just different infrastructure needs to support the growth that you guys are seeing. So we do recommend updating DCC programs every 3 to 5 years to keep current. Maybe I'll just stop there for a minute and see if there's any questions that have emerged up to date.
You just answered mine. I was wondering how outdated our DCCs were, so that's perfect. Thank you. Any questions from councillors? No, go ahead.
And maybe I'll mention to that point in terms of the DCC updates, and it might be covered later, but every 3 to 5 years is best practice, largely because you can actually inflate the costs of your DCC rates annually up to 4 years. You can use CPI to just increase the rates. That doesn't cover the cost of infrastructure increases, unfortunately, but at least it gives you one tool to stay up to date. On the 5th year, you're no longer able to use that increase. It kind of forces you to do a more major update of your DCCs.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you, but with the Bill 46, does Bill 46 in some ways interfere with the original DCC plan? I'm just wondering what the impact was. I remember reading it in the news, and sorry, I should have read up on Bill 46, but
through the mayor. That's a great question. Bill 46 came online with a number of other bills as well. So the DCC kind of portion of those legislative changes were to actually just expand the purview of the services you can charge for. So the new services included fire protection facilities, police protection facilities, and solid waste facilities. So those were never covered through DCCs previously. You were then able to charge for them. It also allowed for amenities to, previously there were more negotiated approaches for amenities, recreation halls, buildings, and new legislative changes allowed for ACCs, amenity cost charges, to be charged through that. It also came online with the small-scale multi-unit housing. That legislation came on around the same time. So with the additional density, the idea is that you can, collect revenue to support for the infrastructure growth that's needed to come along the density.
excellent. Thank you.
So to cover, there are some very specific DCC eligible projects that are set out by the province. It can cover really any one-time capital costs associated to planning, engineering, design, or studies for the services, 3 of which I've already mentioned there, the new services, which were fire, police, and solid waste facilities. And then the more traditional group of services, which was transportation, roads and sidewalks, water services, drainage, sewer, and then parkland acquisition and improvements. So it can cover most of what's in those pieces. Parkland acquisition improvements is a little bit more particular, but the other ones are, as long as it's growth related and it's a one-time capital improvement, they typically are eligible for DCCs. A couple of things they cannot cover is anything that's not related to growth, so an existing deficiency, maintenance and operations, asset renewal. Those are not DCC eligible costs. And then community buildings. So those are actually eligible under ACCs now. You can't include anything under the ACCs that you would otherwise be able to cover through DCCs. So ACCs are a little bit more flexible, and I'll cover those here. They're meant to support with any recreational, environmental, social amenities and recreation that's required for members of the public as growth occurs. So typically we're seeing community centers, senior centers, libraries, daycares, things like that. Same rules apply. If it's not growth related, you cannot charge ACC for those projects. And, it's a little bit more flexible. So there are some parks projects that typically fall under the ACCs because parks is so specific. So we've included some parks, ineligible DCC parks projects into the ACCs that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to capture. Okay, so just about to dig into some of the technical inputs here, if there's no questions. So a couple of pieces. There is regulation on when DCCs can be collected. So it's at time of subdivision or building permit, which means that DCCs have to be, collected through those processes. So you would want to collect subdivision for the low density development, such as single family homes or potentially duplexes. And then for everything else where you're getting a building permit, you would collect DCCs at that time. So apartments, townhouses, commercial, industrial, and institutional development. We get a lot of questions from developers saying, can't you just collect the DCCs at occupancy? It would be better for my cash flow. And unfortunately, the province just doesn't allow to collect at occupancy. So it's just a framework that we're not able to change at this time. In terms of how we're looking to charge the DCCs in the program, essentially based on the small-scale multi-unit housing legislation that I mentioned earlier, it has made the DCC programs a little bit more complex because you're allowed, as of right, up to 4 units on any single-family lot. So it does mean that it's more difficult to capture things like secondary suites when they're occurring in a single-family home. So we've expanded, the low-density residential charge here to include anything that would be covered with that small-scale multi-unit housing legislation. So that would include single-family dwellings with a secondary suite or duplexes, each of which would be allowed a secondary suite. So a duplex would be charged twice. However, it would be a low-density use there. And then we have medium density uses, which has 3 or more units and specifically ground oriented units. So townhomes, things like that. And then you have a high density use for anything that's apartment building in terms of form. Yes.
Another quick question. If the SSMUH, the small scale multi-unit house, isn't applicable to our town, but it doesn't matter because you're just talking about being in line with that legislation as far as the secondary suites in the single family home, right? It's not.
That's right. Yeah,
because
exactly.
we're under 5,000, I believe.
That's right. Yes. So, it does help with being aligned with like Port Alberni, for instance, and their charges if they were to update. In theory, you could kind of take a look and include duplexes in the medium density charge as well.
Right.
This is kind of one of the approaches that's just more oriented towards building form rather than density of use, but there are a few different ways of doing this for sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Apologies for this slide. It's not showing up very well. Oh, it's showing up better up there. So this is just a high-level overview of how the rates are determined. So it includes a few steps here. So the first one being determining growth. The DCCs are really based on the costs of infrastructure divided by the number of units that you're expecting to see in the community. So the first step is really to determine what that number of units would be based on population projections and things like that. Then we would determine the capital costs and timing through engineering and public works and master studies, master planning studies. All of those contributed towards developing project lists. From there, there's a tool called the benefit allocation, which we'll dig into a little bit more. That is really the tool that helps determine what the cost share is between existing versus future users of the service. So that's where existing taxpayers or developers would be kind of shouldering the burden of those costs. From there, we develop the draft rates, determine an assist factor, which we'll dig into as well a little bit more. That's really council's tool to adjust the rates is the assist factor. There's also feasibility testing. It is not required for DCCs. It's becoming, it's recommended for ACCs to ensure that ACCs don't deter development. And then from there, consultation is required for ACCs and best practice for DCCs. We'd send the bylaw to the ministry, and then council would be able to adopt the DCC and ACC bylaw. It's just a high-level overview of the process here. We'll dig into a few of these key levers and steps in a couple of slides. Any questions just on the high-level piece before digging in? Great. So just a quick couple of notes here on growth. We've used BC Stats and census data, planning documents, and the building permit trends to forecast what those growth estimates are going to be. Very difficult to forecast growth and get it completely accurate. These can change based on development permit approvals in the community. So that's another reason why it's really good practice to update the DCCs every 5 years to make sure that the growth estimates and projections are aligned with what's happening. And then from there, we determined industrial, institutional, and commercial rates based on floor area assumptions on how much was needed per residential per person in the municipality. The time horizon that we projected growth is going to be aligned with the programs for the most part. Really, we're looking at the infrastructure that's required to service the same growth timeline here, and so that's typically between 20 and 30 years. There's a couple of larger infrastructure projects that you guys have on the docket, and so there's some growth estimates that are going even farther to reflect some of the larger projects that are coming down the pipe. So that's where kind of timing comes into play here. The closer a project is, the more accurate information we have on what the cost is going to be and what's going to happen. These are typically done on a rolling basis. So you would have your project list and you would seek to build that project list out. You're not forced to or committed to that project list. It is the best estimate of the infrastructure that you need in a point of time based on growth. Staff and council have the ability and direction to be able to update that if the infrastructure that's needed changes over time. So you're not committed to these projects, rather they're what we project is needed based on growth trends of the day. And so that's where some of the extended timeframes are based on the idea that they'll benefit future generations. So I want to talk about a little bit about the benefit factor or the benefit allocation here. So every single project is assigned a benefit allocation between 1 and 100%. You can see here kind of 1% being on the low end. Not that I've seen a benefit factor of 1%, but essentially you have a low level of benefit to development and a really high benefit to development and to future users. So if you were to have a greenfield development, you would have 100% benefit factor if you're bringing out new water lines to that area. If you're looking at an infill community, similar to like Victoria or Duncan, places like that, you're looking at pretty low benefit factors because it's just infill, and it's a difficult argument to say that new development is going to create this entirely new infrastructure cost burden. So every single project, line by line, is actually given this benefit allocation to make sure that the costs are being, pardon me, to make sure that the costs are fairly split between existing and future users of that infrastructure. And then maybe just worth noting here, we'll cover it again a few times, but the portion for the existing users, it's assumed that those would be made up through their non-DCC revenues. So you have your DCC revenues for the portion that's made up for by growth, and then everything else would be contributed by the municipality either through grants or taxpayers or other sources of revenue. Same is true for the municipal assist factor here. So legislation requires every local government to have a municipal assist factor on their DCCs. This is kind of essentially a little subsidy to development to say that the municipalities are also accountable to provide and support development and growth. It can be, so it's between 1 and 99%, 1 being the least amount of assistance you provide, 99 being the most. Typically, it's between 1 and 10% for the most part, sometimes higher if there's a large infrastructure project that municipalities want to support with. This tool is the tool that's completely up to council discretion. You can set the municipal assist factor at whatever number you'd like. It's essentially saying we're going to provide support for development by X amount, and we're going to make up those revenues through other non-DCC revenues. Again, most often it's through taxation. A note on the assist factor, it can't be varied by land use type. You can't say that we want to incentivize single family or incentivize density in apartments and not provide assistance to single family homes in order to deter them. It has to be applied by program. So it's really, you're saying that you want to assist water supply because there's a big treatment plant, but everything else, we want developers to pay their fair share. So that's just a little trickiness on the assist factor. And I believe this is last thing before we get into the programs themselves. Just a couple of notes on how we prioritize projects. So not every single project makes it into the list. If we had all of the wish list, it would be a really large rate. And so we do prioritize projects based on the cost and timing of those projects, which projects are near term and need to get done, most quickly, the level of service that you're seeking to achieve as a district, and then the benefit that those projects have to the future population. So just a quick example of that. You can see in red here, we've got, this is kind of a sample project of $1 million, and in red is the developer's contribution towards that project, and in gray is the district's contribution towards it. So if you were to take the $1 million project and assume that 35% of it benefits new growth and 65% benefits existing users, you would split that ratio so that the developers are contributing $350,000. You would then apply an additional 1% assistance to bring down the developer contribution to $346,500 for that project. Okay. So here's a snapshot of the district's current DCC rate. You can see here. So the average single-family home would be paying just under $14,000. Multifamily is based on per meter gross floor area. So this has been a little bit of a shift. We've put this in per units, maintained commercial accommodation, commercial and industrial uses. A couple of things to note before we just show you the program here is that the municipal assist factor that we just talked about is set at 1% for all programs, with the exception of sanitary sewer treatment and water treatment. So we've actually split up the sewer distribution and network from the treatment, because that treatment plant is very large and will benefit future generations on a longer time horizon. So we've pulled that project out of that sanitary list and kind of kept a sanitary sewer treatment program specifically, and same with water. And so we've put those on a longer time horizon of 50 years and added a municipal assist factor of 25%. The same is true for fire protection facilities. It's a larger facility that'll benefit, has a longer life cycle as a piece of infrastructure. So we've extended the time horizon on that. Sanitary is at 30%, as that just aligns with your master planning and studies that were available to support that project list. So here we have, forgive me on the title there, this is actually just the DCCs for now. So this is the total of the program, so across all the different service areas. And this is the total program costs. So if you were to take every single project that's in there, the total capital program costs are coming out at about $90 million, the municipal responsibility for which is just over half. The amount to be paid by DCCs or ACCs would be almost $40 million. And as you can see, the program time horizons vary quite widely. So something that's helpful is looking at the average municipal responsibility per year. I understand, that it's, not insignificant given the population base that you have. This doesn't necessarily need to be completed as this is an average. The cash flow will, be aligned with when projects need to be completed. Rather, this is just an estimate based on the average divided by the number of years of a program. And so this program yields the rate that you see here. So you have $28,000 for a low density development, medium density at $15,000, and high density at almost $10,000. And commercial accommodations is very similar to the high density. And we'll be able to take a look. We've put these proposed rates in a comparison chart a little later on, so we will show these in alignment with what other communities are doing as well. So here we have the ACC program. It's a much smaller program. We're able to actually show some of the projects that were considered through this for your consideration. So we have Tugwell Field that has some improvements, municipal office, washrooms, recreation hall, all of which we've added in as proposed projects for this program. And here you have, again, very similarly, the proposed ACC program kind of summary in terms of the municipal responsibility and developer responsibility. So again, this is on a 20-year time horizon with a assumed 1% municipal assist factor unless council wants to adjust that. You'll see here, these are the proposed ACC rates at about $6,000 per low density door, and then almost $4,000 for medium density and $2,000 for high density and commercial accommodations. So it is worth noting these programs would be paid separately. And so we are seeing many communities. There aren't that many communities that have gotten through the process of developing the ACC bylaw. You'll see our community comparisons are much more sparse because this is live. People are, creating and adopting these right now. So it is something that we're expecting to come online for a lot of communities coming up very shortly. It's just people are in the works of doing those, setting those rates. So developers would be paying a total of $35,000 per door for a single family home, for instance. So it is worth considering that these are kind of added together for communities and important to be able to explain that to developers. ACCs are kind of that new layer that developers are starting to pay in the province. Hence why the province has started to make that a responsibility of local governments to make sure ACCs specifically don't deter development. So again, apologies, this isn't showing it quite as starkly as I would hope. Basically, you can see here the DCC comparison. So this doesn't layer on the ACCs because we don't have the same municipalities for which to compare. I'm wondering, would it be valuable to try to make this a little bigger so that folks can see it is also in the council package. Oh, okay, wonderful. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so as you can see, we compared municipalities across Vancouver Island predominantly to show some of the rates. We did include Tofino in the end. So yeah, you can see Tofino down there. Their last update was in 2010. So it was quite a while ago, 15 years ago now. It actually was surprising how high the rates were, given that they were done 15 years ago. So I think that, as much as this is an increase in the DCC rate, it's very much aligned with what other communities on the island are doing to keep up with the rising costs of infrastructure. So this comparison is for low density. There's a few additional comparisons in the council package, but just wanting to go through the residential and commercial uses predominantly. So here you can see medium density, again, slightly at the higher end, but it's very much in line with what others are doing. You're also seeing that there is only one other community, I believe, on this chart that has adopted ACCs. And we'll look at the ACCs as well later, but other communities, as they update these, will be updating their DCC bylaws to expand the services, as Ucluelet's doing with fire protection services, which aren't on here, as well as their ACCs. So we're going to see a lot of other communities starting to climb as well. And here is high density, as well as those commercial rates here as well. With respect to the ACCs, you'll note the communities are completely different because there are so few communities that have adopted them. So Ucluelet's DCCs are coming in, and sorry, I believe that there's a mistake in this. Ucluelet would be at 6,000. So sorry about that. So it actually would be between Pitt Meadows and Burnaby at $6,500. So again, you can see that District of North Vancouver is at $26,000. There's a really, really wide range of the ACCs that are being adopted. Some have come in even higher than that. 6,500 is, I think, more in line with what a lot of other communities are going for and looking at as they update the bylaws. So maybe I'll just stop there. That's quite a bit of information, and I know the rates will be probably a pretty big point of discussion. So maybe want to open it up to any questions or comments.
Questions from council? No, I think you can keep going.
Okay, great. Oh,
One quick question. This is more just like your perspective. On the one hand, I can see how the higher your rates are, the less appealing it would be to developers. On the other hand, having seen the other side of it, I feel that perhaps that might be an incentive because developers are like, okay, these guys have thought it out. This is recent data, and we're not going to have to, start horse trading once we get in there. Is that which of those two typically reflects what you see day to day? Like, do higher rates convince people that that's the actual rate versus something that might be unrealistically low?
That's a great question through the mayor. Developers will always provide us with feedback on DCC rates increasing. There's typically a letter that comes in from the Urban Development Institute whenever we do an update on DCCs. That's very, very typical. However, if you are seeing infrastructure not coming in line with developers' needs, I think that there is developer support for increasing rates to ensure that they can actually develop their properties and ensure that they're able to tie into infrastructure and that it's not in poor condition or that it's not over capacity. And so there is this balance where I think developers do understand that DCCs are required and necessary to make sure that their developments can move forward and occur. So there is some level of acceptance. Some of the rates we've seen on the Lower Mainland have been pretty exorbitant. There's obviously really strong backlash when you're starting to pay an $80,000 DCC for a single family home with an additional $24,000 in amenity cost charges on top of that. There's quite a bit of pushback, I think, where these rates are more aligned with the infrastructure that you're seeing. It is more reasonable in terms of justifying where the rates land. They can't deter development. That is one of the stipulations in the Local Government Act. And so even when we're looking at programs and the projects that go on the lists, there is a little bit of consideration to ensure that these are going to be realistically completed in the district. If we were to include every single project, there might not even be the manpower to be able to support doing those projects. So there's a little bit of a reasonability check on the infrastructure projects that get included and how the rate's set. It has to somewhat be proportionally aligned with what's happening in the district, I would say. Does that answer the question?
No,
Okay.
it does. So the example where there's $100,000 added on to a single family home, that's just because the infrastructure is in horrible condition rather than a sort of deterrent.
So that would be a capacity. There would be like an impediment to capacity unless they upsize their infrastructure to support those developments. Having a backlog is not helpful. If your infrastructure is not in good condition and there's a lot that's needed, it does add to some of the costs that are in there. But it would mostly be there is a severe barrier to growth that requires major infrastructure projects to happen. And the cost of infrastructure projects having gone up so much. I can't speak to those examples that are $100,000. It's a lot of projects that must have been on the list. I think it varies. We did try to make sure that it was reasonably aligned with what the district would want to accomplish. There's also a lot of other things that will deter development, and I can pull that up here as well. But, in addition to ACCs and DCCs and cost charges, I think one of the things that we're finding with the economic viability testing that we've been doing is that the land market values are really what most often break pro formas.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other questions there. We did want to cover a little bit about the economic analysis. As I mentioned, it's not required for DCCs. It is required to do some analysis to ensure that ACCs are not deterring development. That can range quite widely based on provincial best practice. It can be, quite a high-level study or analysis of the viability of development down to looking at case studies across the district to make sure that pro formas are working. So there's a pretty wide range of what's accepted there. There is this note here that the Lieutenant Governor can make additional regulations that prescribe economic analysis and things like that. So we're trying to just put that out there as a bit of a caveat here around some of the programs that they could be required in the future. As I mentioned, there's a lot of other things that are impacting the economic viability of development. That includes the market conditions, demand and absorption of properties, land and construction costs is really big, as well as zoning and parking. I think one of the biggest things that we hear in conversations with developers is the timelines. So the faster development can get approved, the better for developers. That obviously really, really starts to compound their costs when development is taking a long time to receive approvals, and we hope that DCCs and ACCs kind of support that, a streamlined version of that. But that's one way. Accelerating development timelines is one way to also just support with development viability on the whole. Obviously, there's other charges that come into line or that impact or impede development there as well. So with that in mind, these are all things that we're considering when going to engagement. We typically do engagement with development stakeholders. They are typically the most interested in DCC and ACC rate increases. We've done public houses in the past, and members of the public typically don't come to those in my experience, but we're definitely open to whatever engagement best supports district transparency. It's best practice to do an engagement for DCCs, and it is required for ACCs. Oops. Something else to note is, especially as developers are getting wind of DCC and ACC increases in rates, there is in-stream protection for anything that's in-stream as an application. So if there is an application that's been submitted, considered complete, and has been paid for, that application would have a 12-month grace period under the previous DCC program. So it doesn't increase the rates immediately once adopted for those that have in-stream developments that are coming into play. There are a couple of exemptions here as well. So for the most part, there's some kind of statutory exemptions around places of worship and things like that. However, there are some exemptions that can be varied by council, and we would suggest and recommend that council waive these so that you are able to charge for those units. So for instance, fewer than 4 units fewer than 4 units. So for duplexes and townhomes, we'd suggest that you do collect DCCs and ACCs for those types of units. Another exemption is building permits for less than $50,000 and residential units for less than 29 meters square in size. So those are just happen to be in the Local Government Act. Building permits, I think, there's not much that you're building for under $50,000, certainly not units for that price. So that makes a lot of sense. However, the fewer than 4 units is typically something we remove. And then I think I'm getting to, so yes, this is the last slide here. So waivers and reductions is another tool that typically councils are interested in. This is something we do separately from DCC bylaws. You're able to waive or reduce DCCs and ACCs for eligible types of development. And those can include non-for-profit rentals, for-profit affordable rental, housing that is environmentally, reduces environmental impacts. And then there's some ACC pieces here, but essentially it's affordable housing units that are part of inclusionary zoning bylaws. So there's a few types of waivers and reductions, particularly affordable housing is one that has come up a lot, and that can be done through a waivers and reductions bylaw or a grant program. It provides a little bit more flexibility on which types of developments you'd like to see have DCCs waived or reduced. So that's something that could be considered in the future once the DCC bylaw and ACC bylaw are adopted. Worth noting with the waivers and reductions that the foregone DCC revenue and ACC revenue would have to be made up through another source. Okay, so we're really here to present the draft DCC and ACC rates. I mentioned earlier from there we would go to stakeholder engagement, after which there would be 3 readings of the bylaw. It would go to the ministry and then come back for a 4th and final reading to be adopted. So a few things here. I believe this was in James's council report. So really today we're looking for direction on bringing forward the rates based on the current assumptions that we've made we're comfortable to go to stakeholders and discuss what those rates are, to receive feedback from the stakeholder community, to understand what their, what issues or challenges might come up for them as they develop with these new rates. So that's all we had for today. Happy to just open up to questions and discussion and comments.
Thank you for your presentation. That's a lot to digest. Any questions for Laura? Councillor Anderson?
Through the mayor, I got a quick one. Stakeholders, obviously the developers, right? Who else would we be talking about? Is there like sort of off the cuff list?
Typically, any affordable housing providers or other housing providers. So, there's no university in Ucluelet, but if universities are providing student housing, we would include them in that. But it is mostly developers or any affordable housing providers that are working in the district.
Thank you.
Would realtors be interested in this?
Would be happy to extend the invitation to any other types of stakeholders that would be interested, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Great. Any other questions for Laura?
Very thorough presentation.
Mm-hmm. Very thorough. Thank you. Okay. So I will now move that the Committee of the Whole rise and the regular council meeting of June 10th, 2025 be reconvened at 6 o'clock.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. Thank you. All right, item 7. We have one bylaw item on the agenda today. The bylaw is the Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw number 1380/2025, and it will be presented by our Director of Community Services, Ms. Fortune.
Good afternoon, Council. Before you have a recommendation to give the District of Ucluelet Fees and Charge Bylaw number 1380 first, second, and third reading. This is basically establishing fees that are not currently on our bylaw. And the intent is to recover the cost of service for delivery, pursue alternative revenue sources. You've got 2 amendments. One is the Parks and Recreation Schedule I, and that's to deal with Amphitrite House. And we certainly looked into a number of different groups that like-minded facilities, looking at District of Tofino, Black Rock, Tinwith, Long Beach Lodge, Wickenden Inn, Shore Building, and the Ucluelet Aquarium. And as well, there's Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy requests, and that's to cover costs that are currently not in the bylaw. And Ed, if you have anything to add to that, please do.
Through Mayor to Council, the year before, last year, we received 26 FOIP requests. The year before that is 20. And this year, we almost half the year already received over 20 FOI requests. And each request generate different volume. Some of them actually come to like 100 pages. And the current fees and charges bylaw do not have specific charges for the Freedom of Information and Request bylaw. This one just clarified because the provincial rules, we do not charge anyone for FOIP requests for the first 3 hours. And after that, we charge $40 per hour. Current fees charge bylaw have one similar charge called file record charges, either 15 minutes incredible, but it's equivalent to $40 an hour. So that's just clarification. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff? It looks pretty straightforward. The Amphitrite House, you've got the commercial and the non-commercial or non-profit rates.
Correct.
And half-day, wedding reception, events. Just a quick sort of side question. Have you received some bookings for Amphitrite House?
Through the mayor, absolutely. Yes, we've had a number of inquiries, and a lot of wedding inquiries are starting to come down.
Great. And what's the capacity of that?
The capacity is 60.
60. Perfect for a small wedding group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is I have one comment, one question. My question's very brief. Is it just a mistake that the wedding reception fee of $750 is under the nonprofit heading? I'm assuming that would fall under a commercial use.
The reason we put it under nonprofit, it could go either. We actually originally had it in both.
Okay.
Is usually it's families that are doing weddings, and so it's a nonprofit rate. It's not usually a commercial driven entity.
Fair enough. That makes sense. And then my second question, as far as use of the facility by local nonprofit groups, I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this would be a use that organizations could request grant and aid support in terms of having those fees waived. Like if someone wanted to use the space and they said, well, we anticipate using it this many days a year or this many evenings, would that be admissible as a request through the grant and aid program?
As with all our recreational facilities, absolutely, council would have that option of providing a grant and aid, falling within the regulations that we've set out on an annual basis.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no other questions for Ms. Fortune, there are 2 recommendations and they can be read together.
I'll move that council give District of Ucluelet fees and charges amendment bylaw number 1380 2025 first, second, and third reading. And furthermore, that council direct staff to publish notice on the district website and through Ukimail for the proposed District of Ucluelet fees and charges amendment bylaw number 1380 2025 and provide an opportunity for the public to make written representations or verbal comments to council prior to adoption of the bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Mafty.
I'll second that.
Councillor Anderson seconds. Any further discussion?
It might be worth correcting the typo in the second motion.
Double direct.
This is direct staff.
No.
I could
So it's
create an
not
endless
a
feedback
double
loop.
negative.
It'd be terrifying.
Yes, okay. It's just repeated twice. All right. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, that carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. There are 4 reports on council's agenda today. The first report item is contract request for 3 new community washrooms. This report will be presented by the Director of Engineering Services, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This agenda item asks for council's consideration of a contract to provide 3 new washrooms in the community. Access to public washrooms is a growing priority and a concern. In 2024, staff initiated a project to assess and prioritize and expand our washroom facilities. In 2025, funding was secured from 2 different sources, Destination Development Fund and RMI, totaling $530,000. Staff further identified priority locations as Hitinkus, Browns Beach, and Wales Parking Lot. Staff then published 2 requests for proposals for the supply and delivery of washroom facilities, unfortunately with no responses on those procurement opportunities. Then staff initiated direct engagement with 1 reputable provider out of Vancouver, and they are called Parkworks Solutions Corporation. We have then, the municipality has received a quote for those 3 washrooms, the supply and delivery of washrooms that kind of align with good form and character and utility as a washroom does. And that quote is $425,913. In addition to the buildings, there are some additional smaller costs to installing these, such as site work prep utilities. So the finances are $530,000 is our budget again, and the cost, including the contract and the additional items, are $528,000, $508, with a very small little bit of a contingency there that we have to work with. So if approved today, the washrooms would be delivered to Ucluelet within the next 6 months and installed ready for next spring. Thank you, Council. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. McIntosh. I was wondering when these washrooms would appear. The Destination Development Fund, I think that came about through a conversation with Mr. Lawrence and I with Cheryl McClay through Ministry of Jobs and Economic Development. And so it came to 340,000 that we were able to put toward these washrooms. That's going back quite some time ago. So really happy to see that this is coming to fruition. The third location on our agenda, it says Whale's Tail Beach. I think it's actually the Whale's Tail parking lot, or the Whale parking lot, which is on Coast Guard Road.
That's correct. Thanks for that correction.
Right. Great. Any questions from council? No, pretty straightforward. There is one recommendation, if anyone would like to move that.
I can do that.
Councillor Anderson.
I'll move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to enter into an agreement with Parkworks Solutions Corporation in the amount of $420,913.28 plus GST for the supply and delivery of 3 public washroom facilities.
I think you read the number wrong.
$425,918 or $913.28. Did I read it wrong again?
No, that's correct. You said 420,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
my bad.
Okay. Great. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed. That carries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council.
Thank you.
It's a good thing I'm not the CFO.
The second report item is CBC licensing agreement renewal. This report will be presented by our Manager of Corporate Services.
Through Mayor to Council, this is housekeeping items. Last CBC lease expired this year with 2020 to 2025. So staff have negotiated a little bit with the CBC team and proposed a $50 increase, 10% from 510 to 560. And the lease agreement also has been reviewed and agreed by the finance staff as well. It's ready for council to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Pretty straightforward. There is one recommendation.
I'll move that council approve the attached CBC first renewal to the licensing agreement.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed. That carries. Thank you, Mr. Chow. The next report item is letter to the province requesting reconsideration of significant increases to foreshore lease rates, and it will be presented by the Manager of Corporate Services as well, Mr. Chow.
Through Mayor to Council, this is a follow-up of a council direction. On March 10, 2025, council directed staff to collect more information on the foreshore lease and draft some letter to the province to advocacy on the foreshore lease holder. CAO Ms. Harding actually met with the owner and already have some meeting took place. So staff drafted the draft letter for council to review. Council can give staff some directions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. It's a great letter. I was also at that meeting with Mr. Harding with MLA Osborne on May 21st, and she definitely encouraged us to send a letter and copy her office as well. So there is one recommendation.
I got it. I will move that council authorize Mayor McEwen to sign the attached letter and meet with provincial representatives to discuss the foreshore lease issue.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty seconds. Any further discussion?
I would suggest 2 minor edits to the letter. The first paragraph says 500% escalation. That sounds somewhat confrontational, and I think maybe 500% increase is pretty impartial. And then I don't know how Neptune Ice would feel, but it might be worth, if it was my business, I'd want Neptune Ice, like the official business name, to be listed rather than Neptune's, which I think isn't their legally registered name. But I think the letter's great, and I think it's critically important.
Great, thank you for those edits. Any other edits anyone found?
Mayor, just also include for those listening, that Ukilathot was also part of our discussions and concerns regarding, and will also be included in the letter, copied in the letter.
They are copied as well, yes. Thanks for reminding us. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. And the last item is Union of BC Municipalities Minister Meetings. Mr. Chow?
Through Mayor to Council, staff attended the information session hosted by the UBCM, and we have attached the booking details. Council just need to give staff some direction on which minister meetings you would like us to book. Then we can make the booking and prepare some material for it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think we're prepared this evening, but thank you for including this in the package, and we'll give it some thought. I'd also like to make a note that we sometimes also join District of Tofino and the ACRD for joint meetings for issues that affect all of us, or two of us. And I do have a list of what the ACRD are intending to apply for. A couple of them we could certainly join in with them. But yeah, we'll. Do you know what the deadline for this is? I think it's July 2nd. July 2nd?
Coming up.
Wow. Okay, so we need to get our thinking caps on and
Well, we have one more meeting between now and then. Right?
We do, yeah. So if everybody can really think of what ministers we'd like to meet with, that would be helpful. Okay, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, there's one correspondence item. This is WildSafe BC regarding Pacific Rim Bridge funding request. So it looks like they are requesting bridge funding. They have applied for RMI funding from the province, and that request is pending. So they're requesting bridge funding of $4,000 until that RMI request is answered. Mr. Harding, did you want to say anything about this? Or Mr. Cadman? Or Miss Fortune?
Miss Fortune's got
Through the mayor, I'm
some
going to
background on that.
I'm going to stick handle this one as it were, being in hockey time as we are.
We are, yes.
This is a bridging. The program, the WildSafe BC, is needing funding sooner than later. We should know shortly. We've got a tentative approval with the RMI, but we still have a couple weeks before we get full approval on that. So this is to give them the bridging to allow them to move forward with their summer programs. And so the funding ultimately, hopefully, will come out of the RMI funds.
And at that point, the bridge funding could be recovered?
That's correct.
Okay, so their request is $20,000 for RMI funding.
That is correct. And
But
it's through the mayor, it's 20,000 annually for 3 years.
For 3 years, okay. And there's a tentative approval in place, but nothing definitive at the moment.
That's correct.
Perfect. All right, well then I will make a motion that council approve bridge funding in the amount of $4,000 as requested in the letter from WildSafe BC. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Hoare seconds. Further discussion?
No.
All right, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. right, Mayor's announcements. I'm pleased to announce the launch of the District of Ucluelet's new website, which will be live this week. In fact, tomorrow, I believe. A fresh, user-friendly platform designed to better serve our residents, businesses, and visitors. This update reflects our commitment to transparency, increased accessibility, and improving how we connect with the community. I encourage everyone to explore the new site and take advantage of the newly improved features. I'm definitely looking forward to this. This is a long time coming. I just wanted to note that the Van Isle 360 sailboats they're here this evening for their banquet, and they will be taking off tomorrow morning on the next leg of their journey. So a good spot to watch is at Amphitrite, if anybody wants to watch. Do we know what time they're taking off, Miss Fortune?
I believe it's just 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock?
I believe so.
Great. And I also wanted to mention that the Ucluelet Chamber of Commerce is hosting an all-candidates forum this Thursday at 6 o'clock here in this room. And it will be broadcast on Zoom and recorded on YouTube, just like our council meetings are. And so at least 3, if not all 4, of the candidates will be here to speak about why they're running and answer some questions that the moderator will put to them.
That's here.
That's here in this room.
Right.
And as I said, if you can't make it in person, you can watch it from home on Zoom, or watch it later in your pajamas with on YouTube.
What time again?
6 o'clock this Thursday. And I also wanted to mention that June 21st is our secondary school graduation, starting at 2 o'clock at the school, and I will be there. And I was just asked to give out our scholarship that the district offers each year, so I'm happy to do that. All right, so council committee reports. Councillor Anderson.
All right. I'm just gonna look at the calendar and try and figure out what happened here. I'm never on the ball with this. The day after our last meeting, I had an important meeting the next day. It was at the aquarium. I read to the daycare Little Beans. None of them listened. They all just took off.
Little beans.
Yeah, they just I think it was like one kid really was into it, and the rest.
Did you read?
I brought a book, and it was about this grandma's binoculars, and it's actually written by Shirley Martin.
Yes, I know the book.
Okay.
Yeah, and I thought it was apropos, and one kid kicked me. I don't know why.
You should have tried Moby Dick, maybe.
Yeah, next time I'll just read a novel. The next day, what happened the next day was the community forest tour that we went on. You guys might want to talk more about that, but that was terrific. I thought it might be like the last one that we did, but this one was entirely different and extremely insightful. I think Eric always does a great job on that, but this one was particularly, we learned a massive amount on that. We made it back just in time to watch our kids at the musical showcase. And then I had a meeting with Avi Bryant with Rising Tide Boat Works later on that day, which was great. He's, as you know, bought the Ucluelet Harbor Seafoods old lot, the Trappa lot, and is moving forward with that. So had a good discussion about the future and what's going to happen down there. What else was there? I had a meeting with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities with Surfrider on Thursday, June 5th, which was interesting. I got to see potential funding for the resurf project that's in town, that new building, the Kwanzaa hut that's down there. Interesting part of that is the Remy, I can't think of his last name right now, but the fellow that we talked with FCM, said as a side note that there's quite a few undersubscribed grants right now So he just started asking me about things that we may want. So I'm gonna circle back with him. Building things are oversubscribed, but there's quite a few other things that are available right there. So he said we could have a conversation. Later on that day was the YG, the Ucluelet First Nation leadership meeting. You might want to talk more about that, but I thought that was great. We learned a couple of new, or how to say a couple of words. I think that was our CAO's suggestion to do that, and that was actually pretty good. I think I was the only one who didn't say things right. I tried. Yeah. Yeah, you did good. You did a good job on it. What was after that? I think that's it. We had that economic development position meeting with with Daniel Sayland, and you guys were both involved in that, the mayor and Richard. And yeah, I think that's. Yesterday we had a special council meeting and talk about the review, but then also we talked. We had a Blue Economy Working Group meeting, which is with Coast. Jason Goldsworthy, Sophia, Pacific Can was there, and that was great, and our lovely Ms. Fortune was there, so that was great. So it looks like there's some really interesting things happening and some forward momentum with the idea of having a decarbonization hub in town. And I'll leave it at that for me.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hoare.
Loved the Barclay Community Forest Tour. I just want to do that all the time. Go out and have an excuse to poke around and see things from a different perspective. And Eric was fascinating. Like, he had so much information about forestry, and yeah, I just found it fascinating. The meeting with the Ucluelet government, the mayor is really good at pronouncing their name because she says it every time we have an agenda. So just so you know, Councillor Anderson, if you, she says it every time. We say it once in a blue moon. So practice makes perfect. That is exactly it. On Saturday, I had a Vancouver Island Regional Library Board meeting, which was pretty dense, pretty busy, kept me quiet for a while. And they're looking at, they've actually lost their executive director. He has been headhunted by the Vancouver Public Library. So there's a little bit of leadership shifting going on. So yeah, that's, things are changing a little bit at Verl. But it was a really good meeting. And then that night, well, Saturday night and also Friday night was the Glee show. Councillor Mafty was there, and I didn't hit him up too much for the 50-50 tickets, but we had lots of the community out, actually more than we expected Friday, because it was the hockey game. So we thought it was going to be a really small turnout, but we had, I counted over 120 people on Friday night and over 135 on Saturday. So give or take one or two, because, you know, I'm taking money and trying to write down numbers. So the kids were amazing.
Best one yet.
Oh, it was so good. Yeah, so good. I love how much they choreograph their own stuff, and that's kind of fun to watch. So yeah, so that was Friday and Saturday night. It was World Oceans Day on Sunday, and there were some really interesting displays around town with some of the repurposed flotsam and jetsam from the ocean. Our special council meeting, and I was going to point out about graduation on the 21st, but I will, you know, the mayor's going to be there. I plan to be there too. But I will also point out, if anybody's looking for something to do tonight, it is the finale for Yuki Idol at the Army and Navy. So there's a bunch of competitors, and there's money on the line, and it starts at 9 o'clock tonight. So good luck to all who are in it.
Do you know how many there are competing?
Ooh, that is a good question. They've been letting, I believe it is one in Oh, of course, I just lost it. Come on, pull it back up. Da-da. 2 contestants advance from each night, so 8 finalists tonight.
Wow.
Unless they did a bonus. Sometimes they've done a bonus finalist. So. But I can't guarantee anything because I haven't been there.
Lots going on. That's great. For myself, Wednesday, May 28th, our ACRD meeting was actually held in Anakla at the House of Hawaiiat. So that was a very long day. I had to meet Director Siga at the junction at 6 a.m. And we carpooled to Port Alberni, where the shuttle bus picked all of us up and took us to Banfield. And
Taking the boat.
the boat would have been much quicker, but part of it was sort of being together on the bus. Yeah. And Director Cote threatened that we would have to sing that song. Yeah. Anyway, it was great to have our ACRD meeting somewhere other than in Port Alberni at the ACRD office. And I had not been to the east side of Banfield ever because I always go by boat, so I go to the west side. So we had a little tour at the school there on the East Banfield side. It's kindergarten to grade 12. So it was a...
Fun fact, I actually taught at that school very, very briefly.
Did you really?
I did.
We met the vice principal who gave us a tour, and they actually have 4 students graduating this year from grade 12. It was a really neat tour. And then there was also a shellfish harvesting company that's doing oysters right now.
Oh yeah, JP Hasty. Yeah, Nova Harvest.
JP, yeah. Nova, yeah. So we had a tour of that facility, which was fascinating. And then the House of Hawaiiat is where the actual meeting was held. And we also saw the Hawaiiat council chambers in the other building across the street. So, yeah, it was a really interesting day. Got home at 7 at night, so really long day. The following morning, May 29th, was our tour of the BC community, or the Barclay Community Forest from 9 till 1. Again, complimenting Eric Holberg on doing a great tour, and we all learned a lot. And the weather cooperated. It was beautiful that day. The next day, May 31st, I attended the Red Carpet Gala here at the UCC. You were there as well, Councillor Anderson. And that was a fundraiser for the firefighters and for PRAS, the Pacific Rim Arts Society. And it was a great opportunity to get dressed up for a change and participate. June 4th, Mr. Harding and I had a meeting with Sergeant Mark Jones, and Mr. Harding suggested holding it at the RCMP station. So that's where we held our meeting. We got a little tour of the station, saw the two cells. And a fun fact, Clifford Olson was held in one of those cells in the early 80s. He was actually arrested very close to Ucluelet. If you look up Clifford Olson's arrest, the news articles all say he was arrested near Port Alberni, but it was actually here in Ucluelet. And he was arrested about to pick up a couple of hitchhikers, I believe. So anyway, that's a bit of trivia for everyone today. And later that afternoon, I went to the Ucluelet and Area Child Care Society AGM, also here at the UCC, and Little Beans participated as well. They had their strollers all decorated up in parade fashion and did a little parade around for us. And then there were a number of musical interludes by the kids, and it was really well attended. I think there were over 100 people there. It was. And it ended with a fashion show, that's right, yeah. It was a really fun event to be at, and it took all of an hour. The next day, June 5th, in the morning, was Resort Community Collaborative Mayors Meeting. That's the 14 of us mayors that are in resort municipalities. And it was just a bit of an update from everybody on what's happening in our communities. Of course, 12 of them are ski resorts, so they are transitioning into their shoulder season, so it's all about mountain biking and golfing for them right now. And we're just ramping up, of course, with our tourist season. And later that day, I was on the ACRD Personnel Committee, which I didn't even know I was on, but apparently I am, and so I participated in that meeting. And then that evening was our team's meeting with the Ukulula Thought Government leadership team. The next day, June 6th, in the morning, was an iced tea meeting on Zoom, Island Coast Economic Trust. There's only 3 of those a year, so they're always really interesting, and I love attending those. And then the same day, at 1 o'clock, was our meeting with the ACRD and regarding an economic development position, possibly here, supporting the West Coast. And the ACRD was, we were just bringing them into the loop about that. The next day, June 7th, Saturday at 11 o'clock, was a ribbon cutting on the Wild Pacific Trail at the Ancient Cedars Loop. And it was also honoring Bob and Vi Mundy, who both passed away last year. And so their families were, a lot of their family were there to welcome the ribbon cutting and the dedication. So that was a great event. June 9th, at 1:30, Mr. Harding and I met with the Acoustics team and the owner of High Focus Island here in person at the district office. Just sort of touching base, I think they will be presenting another application to us at sometime in the fall. And then that day at 4 o'clock, we had our special in-camera meeting. Was this just yesterday? It was. Yep. Feels like a week ago. We had our special in-camera meeting, and then, and 3 o'clock that day was the meeting with the Coast team that Councillor Anderson and was speaking about, and Ms. Fortune was there. And yeah, that's it for my meetings.
How about Councillor Mafty?
Did I miss you? No.
I thought you deliberately ignored me.
Oh,
No,
did
I'm
I?
kidding.
I'm sorry.
Community Forest Tour is awesome. Speaking with my res hat on, I think we're going to try and invite him to give a presentation. That was incredible. What an asset. Glee shows were amazing. The only thing that I did that I don't think was covered, which again I did with my res hat, was a visioning workshop. I don't know what exactly it was called, but that's what it was at Amphitrite House. Abby hosted Tawny Lem, who hosted the Historical Society, Res, and Wild Pacific Trail Society, to sort of discuss what that building might look like as it serves the needs and interests of the community. I thought there were some really cool ideas. It was lovely. And not a bad place to have a meeting with whales and snacks, and it's like 2 of my favorite things right there.
Whales and snacks, perfect. And meetings. You love meetings.
Meetings are up there, but not
quite that
it was
high.
good. It was the trifecta: whale, snack, and meeting. So
Perfect,
yeah.
perfect. All right, thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to miss you.
Oh, that's all right.
All right, we are now moving on to question period. This is an opportunity for the public to ask questions and comment on matters within Council's jurisdiction. Representations about bylaws that Council is prohibited from holding a public hearing on, or bylaws that were subject to a public hearing, are not permitted at this time. There are clearly no people in the audience that wish to address Council. Are there any members of the public attending by Zoom or telephone that wish to address Council?
Through the mayor, there are no members of the public attending via Zoom right now.
Or telephone?
Neither.
Neither, okay. And have we received any emails to communityinput@ucluelet.ca?
Through the mayor, we have not received any emails.
All right, thank you. I declare that the June 10th, 2025 regular council meeting be adjourned at 6:37.
I'll second.
Councillor Mafty second.